It could be the decade's biggest arms deal as Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a two-day visit to Russia. What does it really mean for foreign policy and the defense interaction as well? Joining me to discuss this, the international think tank Gateway House's Neelam Deo to take us through what this really means. Neelam, busy year for you with all the travel that Prime Minister Modi has done. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us here on Bloomberg TV India, as he shuts out this year with the Russia visit, a two-day short visit over the Christmas break. What are we anticipating to hear? Defense deals and a lot more?
Well, a lot of defense deals. I mean, people are talking about orders which may add up to about 10 billion. Certainly the biggest item in that is the air defense, the missile air defense system, which itself is worth almost $6 billion. I think the only other country to which it has been sold so far by the Russians is China. And then there are all the other projects, the hiring of another nuclear-powered submarine, the building in India of some 200 Kamov helicopters, upgrading the present air transport aircraft that we have already of Russian vintage. So there will be the purchase of about 150 tanks. The defense minister, Mr. Parrikar, had visited Russia just about a week ago to conclude some of these deals. Of course, there are still issues in some of the remaining for contracts actually to be signed, including the fact that there is some concern that the Indian Navy may not be able to absorb the high technology which has been incorporated into the latest nuclear sub. There are some concerns also about the closeness of the US-India defense relationship, and in terms of whether then the Russians will want to share all their cutting-edge technologies. And certainly that will be one of the points that will be discussed. But other than that, there will be some contracts signed for nuclear energy, two more at the Kudankulam site, maybe two more plants in Andhra Pradesh are being spoken of. A number of other contracts, but it's all concentrated in defense and nuclear, and there will be hopefully some progress in the energy area as well. There's talk of a pipeline. It seems to be actually quite far away, because a pipeline through China is still, I think, a pipe dream. A pipeline through Pakistan is again being talked about, but is an unlikely prospect, at least in the near term. There are, of course, other levels of cooperation in energy, and we see that the Essar oil that the Russian companies have bought into, and the Rosneft, the purchase by ONGC from Rosneft, which should eventually give us some 3.3 million barrels a year. Those will make further progress, and that deal is going to be signed during the visit of Prime Minister Modi. But other than nuclear defense and these areas, there is not so much in the commercial exchanges that we have to talk about. And there are really one basic reason for that. Part of that is that Indian corporations are quite risk averse. And the other part, of course, is that Russia doesn't have a diverse private sector. There are a few big companies, reasonably dysfunctional in some ways, and our own big companies now are pretty debt-laden and have become even more risk-averse.
So there is a bit of a dichotomy there. Neelam, I want to go back and focus on the point you mentioned about the US relations. Meanwhile, I want to just mention that the Prime Minister has just tweeted pictures of the gifts that President Putin has given out. They've gifted him a page from Mahatma Gandhi's diary, which has handwritten notes, as well as an 18th century sword from Bengal. This is just some anecdotal tweets that are coming in from Russia as the Prime Minister will depart today evening. The shifting role as the top supplier of defense from US to Russia, plausible shift in that. How does that play out for relationship with the United States as well, Neelam? Because this is a very tight balance that the External and Foreign Ministry would have to deal with.
Yeah, I think there's some understanding of it, because in the purchase of the Gorshkov, the aircraft carrier that we have, there were a lot of issues because that was the time also when the Soviet Union dissolved and Russia had to take over those responsibilities. So the cost overrun actually made it 3 times as expensive as the original price. It took much longer. That created some issues. At the same time, the other fallout has been that because we have become so much closer to the United States and there have been such massive defense purchases, the Russians have started to sell to Pakistan. That is a smaller aspect. Really what India and Russia together must talk about is the Russian relationship with China as well as the Indian relationship with China. Russia has become more and more dependent for sale of its energy products, petroleum, gas to China, as the Europeans have started to sanction it. And now with the crisis in Russia-Turkey relations, it will become even more dependent on China. What does that mean for the India-Russia strategic relationship? That's the real issue that needs to be discussed. And we have to see whether anything is said on that during this visit.
Neelam, before I let you go, I want to just understand that most of these deals that we do, especially when it comes to export and import, it seems like the tide was always tilted on the where we import from rather than what we can offer. In terms of what India offers to Russia, in terms of the trade balance, what can we look forward to? Because at this point, it just looks like it seems like a one-way deal. We gain from the defense deals as well in terms of strength, but in terms of the trade balance, it's tilted quite in the favor of Russia.
No, you're absolutely right. Really, the sectors that have a lot of potential is pharma. We should be supplying pharma products to Russia as we do to the United States, to Europe, everywhere else in the world. The other area is, now that Russia has been sanctioned by the Europeans, and it has stopped importing large amounts of food products from Poland and now again even from Turkey. Indian companies should be much more nimble about trying to export those kind of products, including ready-made garments, shoes, cosmetics, the whole works. Here the problem is the Russian preference for European products and for European quality. We now have a fashion industry, we have high quality products, and it's not clear why our companies are not being much more proactive in trying to occupy the space that has been vacated by European companies and is going to be increasingly vacated by Turkish companies. So I think a lot of this really depends on inertia on the Indian side as well, which is not proactive except in the energy exchanges, where too the public sector units are much more active than the private sector. But I understand that the production of the Kamov helicopter is likely to be done with one of the Anil Ambani companies, and he is part of the Prime Minister's business delegation. Now that would be a genuine Make in India thing, and it would also improve the balance of payments imbalance that we have with Russia.
Neelam Deo, pleasure speaking to you. Have a great season ahead and a happy new year as well if you don't catch up with you before that. It's been a busy year for foreign policy trackers and relationships with the United States, Russia and a host of other countries as Neelam tracks closely at Gateway House. On that note, completely out of time in this edition of In Business. Thank you so much for watching.